So in this video, I apologize in advance. I am still recovering. I don't know if you can see the purple in my wrist. So I'm right-handed and I fell and sprained my wrist, so good times. But I want to talk through, I want to work through this problem from the review sheet and then show you how Desmos can help you make sure you're graphing correctly. So as we begin, what I would suggest that you do on this one is, I'm telling you to write it as a sine and as a cosine function. So then I would draw I would trace out either a sine function starting here and have it in one color so you can see, well, or I could do this. So notice if I start here, I'm trying to draw so you can see my green. Okay, so this is one period of sine that's been reflected. So now when I look at that, I notice that the amplitude from here down is 2, from here up is 2. So in green, y is equal to 2, negative 2, because it was reflected, sine, and then my period of how long did it take it to do everything it's going to do? It got all the way here to pi. And so that means if the period is pi, I have my 2 pi over b needs to equal pi. So b would equal 2. And then this one didn't get shifted left or right because I started here where x is equal to 0. But it did get shifted up 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's one way to write it. Or and then let me come up with a cosine one. So then I can use in a different color. I can say, well, cosine starts at the top and it comes all the way down and comes back here. Okay, I'm trying to show you the purple. So what this has done is, well, we still have an amplitude of 2. We're starting at the top, so we don't need to make that negative. It's beginning. We didn't do any reflections there. We still have a period of pi, so that's going to be a 2. But now we did shift. So we shifted back to this value right here. It's hard to see what that is, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines before you get to negative pi. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines before you get to pi. So each one of those is pi over 4. So I went to the left, pi over 4, to do this one in particular. So that was a plus pi over 4. And then I, once again, have to shift up 3. Okay, so now let me show you how Desmos can help us with that. Hopefully you can see my screen. So, I want it this way. So what I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do the function. We just said sine, actually, let me come back in front. Can you see what I'm typing? I'm sorry. Well, it's as good as it's going to get. We said a negative 2 sine of, in here, sine of 2x, close those parentheses. And then negative 2 sine of 2x, and then we had a plus 3. So here's this first graph. Now, it's hard to tell with my scale across the bottom what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to this little tool button right there, and I'm going to change things. So notice I can make this, from here I can put it in, oh, okay, here it is. Radians or degrees. Trig functions are so much easier to graph in radians. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the step of this to be pi. Can you see down here it says pi? They're pi over 4. And then I'm going to go from, well, so let's just say from negative pi to, I don't know, to 2 pi. So now, and then this is, do you see how junky this is with all those extra? I can turn off the minor grid lines, and then I can show, I want to see a step of 1 for my y values. And let's go from, let's say from negative 2 to 7. I don't know, it doesn't matter a whole lot. And so now I can see my graph more clearly. And I know, okay, so let's get out of that. So now I can see, notice across the bottom, they've labeled these, what's the word I'm looking for? They've labeled the grid, and they've labeled the grid this way, so it's really easy to see what's happening. And the other one that I had graphed a second ago, I said this was 2, we got a function for cosine, and then it was 2, I need a second set of parentheses here, because I want x plus pi over 4, and then come out, and then close all those parentheses. Oh, that was too many. Okay, now we're looking good. And then I needed to say plus 3. Oh, that tells me I did something wrong. What's wrong here? Let's close that parentheses. Plus 3. There we go. Okay, so now I know that my two graphs are the same. Well, this is the same thing as what I had just done here on the paper. Notice I could shift my cosine, I could shift this over a period the other direction. Well, the period is pi, so I can take, let's see if I can take all this. Can I copy all this? You can on a computer. Okay, I'm not sure how to copy this on my iPad. But what I can do here, let me do this 2 cosine, parentheses 2, I need another parentheses, x. Now I'm going to try and, where does x go? X. I'm going to now move it 3 pi over 4. Oh, and then I want a parentheses here and close that parentheses, and then we're going to shift this up 3 like we have before. And so now notice this one is a cosine one. So one of them, the blue one, okay, I can turn these off. Did you know that? You can hit that and it's, so here's just the blue. I can turn off the blue, I can turn on the red. It's in the same spot. There's the blue. It sort of looks purple. Kind of. And then I can turn on the green one here. So the difference between the green and the blue is that the green, I was shifting my graph to the right. So the beginning point that I would have graphed is right here, and then I would go. The blue one, my beginning point, I had shifted it to the left pi over 4. But notice, I could do either way. So there are infinitely many ways. I can do a sine graph. So once again, the sine, the 2 stays the same, and I can shift my sine graph maybe back here. So then I could say x, so do you see what I'm describing? Hang on, turn that off for a second. I'm saying that I did a sine where I went down first, so I made that negative. I can make it positive where I can scoot back here and go up and then down and then to this. So what this does is that means I have to scoot it to the left, negative, well, I have to scoot it to the left pi over 2. So coming back through here, this becomes plus pi over 2. And then finally out here, plus 3. Oh, I had turned it off, notice? So turning it back on, notice it matches up with all these other ones. So when we graph sine and cosine, and actually tangent, cotangent, and secant and cosecant, I have infinitely many ways I can write them. Granted, there are also wrong ways to do it. So what I do on my answer key is if I ask you to do 2, I'll have maybe 6 reasonable answers on my answer key. And so then if you match one of my 6, fantastic, life is good, I move on. If you don't, then I have to stop and think about what you did and verify if you're right or wrong. Because notice if I said, if I change this to a pi over 4, well, that's not the right graph. So it's not that every answer works. It's that there are infinitely many answers, and I have to verify that you got the right one. But I would advise you, let's turn that off. I'd advise you to make it simple, and if it's really complicated and I'm tired, I don't want to think about it. So practice these and let Desmos help you. So if you wanted, we could have, notice I have this pi over 4 down here because my period ended up being pi, and so we divided it into 4 pieces. But if I had changed this, let me turn off these. If I had changed this to a 3, okay, now I no longer, this pi over 4 is no longer helpful. What I want to do instead is I would come over here and make my step, well, okay, hang on, pi over 6. Yep. And so now, maybe I should have turned on more minor grid lines. Well, let's see, that's going to get a little so there's more, or I can, let's turn off the minor grid lines, and then I can zoom in a little bit here. And so now notice that they've done this where it's in terms of pi over 6. So I care about 1 pi over 6, I care about 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, and that sort of thing. So this Desmos can help you check your answers beautifully. So good luck, go practice. I hope that was helpful.